Disney villains are dead. I know, right? Just call me Captain Obvious, man in the RMS, no shit Sherlock, heading for you don't say island. You don't need me to say it at this point. Disney has been failing us so hard on the villain front the last couple of years. Hell, the last great villain we got from them was King Candy, and that was all the way back in 2012. Man, I was still in high school when that movie came out, and now I'm turning 30 this year. Can I come out and still be 29? So villains have always been a prominent part of our childhoods. It was always so satisfying watching our favorite heroes vanquish a foe, be it Spider-Man with the Green Goblin, Superman with Lex Luthor, Batman with the Joker. It's a tale as old as time, and Disney knows that better than anyone. Or at least they did, once upon a time, but I think everyone already knows that by now. There's plenty of videos already talking about how Disney just sucks at making villains nowadays. Well, with their twist villains, their generational trauma, and whatever the hell Magnifico was supposed to be. Instead, I'd rather use this time to focus on an older video that I made not that long ago. In fact, it's not even a year old yet. So, just in time for Pride Month, we're returning back to Nimona, one of my most passionate, positive, and weirdly controversial videos. And not for the reasons you might think. Now, you'd think a video like that, talking about LGBTQ representation, would get the usual comments of people going, "Ew, stop the gay woke agenda from brainwashing our kids." And yeah, those comments do show up every once in a while, but about 90% of those comments from that video were actually pretty positive. Save for one thing. How dare I not like the director? Well, in my defense, I thought I made my point pretty clear about the director in that video. How you can have a villain who fully represents the themes of the film while at the same time still being a character in their own right. But apparently I didn't. Now before we begin, this entire video isn't gonna be me going, "Why y'all boo me for? I'm right." Well, okay, maybe it is a little bit like that. I still stand by my thoughts on the director, but the comments I got from that video did offer some perspective that I both acknowledge and even agree with to an extent. This isn't going to be a comment reaction video. I've mostly learned to avoid the comment section nowadays. If anything, this is me just trying to make my point more clear on why I still don't like the director in the end, but it's perfectly fine if you do. I don't think the director is a bad antagonist, honestly. I just think she's serviceable at best. She works fine for what the movie requires, and that's it. And I, frankly, find that to be boring. Now, I understand why they did that. I do understand that was intentional. She's supposed to be a reflection of modern day conservatives, and that's it. And there's my problem right there. And that's it. She can't be anything else. She's not allowed to be anything else. She's not allowed to have any personality. She's not allowed to have any character of any kind. And given some of the villains that I've seen in the past, I say that's what she was supposed to be is a pretty flimsy defense. Like I said in the main video, you can have your villains be both a representation of the overall theme of the film and a character at the end of the day. It's entirely possible. You can make that villain either insanely complex and interesting, or just plain fun. Either one would have worked, whether you want to go down the Frollo route or the Gaston route. Well, hell, there's two great examples right there. So let's start with the winner of the Nobel Peace Prize, our boy and savior, Gaston. Gaston is the greatest creation Disney has ever created. I mean, how do you not love Gaston? He's just so sexy and cool and sexy and strong and sexy. And did I mention sexy? Apparently LeFou thought so. He was just so fucking gay for Gaston, and honestly, I can't blame him.
It should have been me, not him! It's not fair!
Honestly, what was Belle even thinking? She really is some wacky girl. What with her modern day of thinking, her desire to read books, go see the world, and make washing machines. Oh wait, that last one's actually bad. Back to the good one, sorry. How can anyone not love Gaston? I mean, even his song is named after him. Because how can you do better than Gaston? The man who's hunted practically every animal known to mankind, the man who wins every fight he's in, who can carry 10 times his own weight, who can eat 5 dozen eggs in a single sitting. Which, by the way, is actually really bad for you. Gaston, you might want to cut back on the eggs. It could actually kill you.
When I was a lad, I ate 4 dozen eggs every morning to help me get large.
Like, at this point, I'm surprised that he hasn't cured cancer yet. Seriously, how can you not love Gaston? In fact, he's so damn cool, I feel like I could do literally whatever he tells me to do. He wants me to jump off a bridge? Absolutely. He wants me to go to bed on time? You bet your ass I'm going to sleep. He wants me to grab my torches and pitchforks and join an angry mob and go kill some random guy in the woods all because the girl that he likes has fallen for him instead? Fuck yeah! I listen to Knock Loose! This is a casual Thursday for me! As funny and wholesome as the memes are about Gaston, we forget how truly terrifying of a villain that he really is. In most stories back then, Gaston would have been the hero, and in some sense, he is, at least to the villagers. Everyone admires him. For a man like him, with the massive ego of Ronnie Radke that he has, to have all of that support and admiration, despite those people not really knowing who he is as a person, is actually terrifying. This man can quite literally get away with anything, and as the movie progresses, you can clearly see that. He's not above bribing public officials to do his bidding, he can incite a mob almost instantly. This is perhaps the single most timeless aspect of this movie. How many times have we seen this sort of behavior both before or since this movie came out? It's a tale as old as time, and it sadly never gets old. I mean, just look at the mob song, which if you ask me, is the real villain song of the movie. Gaston is fun and lively, sure, but it's more about hyping up the exaggeration of his character, while the mob song is an actual establishment of a motivation and Gaston's nefarious evil. He wants to kill the beast because Belle cares about him purely out of spite, and using words that have also aged like a fine wine.
The beast will make off with your children. He'll come after them in the night.
No.
He manages to get every single villager on his side. It makes for a tense, tragic, and sinister song that easily shows us why Gaston is such a terrible yet fantastic villain. Because along with just being timeless, it's just a perfect representation of what fear and prejudice can do. Gaston's not afraid, mind you, he's clearly just spiteful and petty. It's the villagers, however, who are the victims of real fear. And what makes the song even darker is the fact that Howard Ashman, the writer of the song, wrote it as an allegory for homophobia. Howard Ashman was a gay man who was sadly dying of AIDS during the production of this movie. This was at a time where homophobia was already pretty rampant, but the AIDS epidemic of the 80s just made the whole thing even worse. Because people who were uninformed about the disease, thinking you could just get it by being around someone who has it, now had an excuse to be homophobic. And the Reagan administration probably made it worse on purpose because of Reagan's blatant homophobia. It got to a point where Captain Planet had to step in and say, "Hey, y'all are tripping, knock it off." But by then, the damage was done, and the stigma continued well after Howard's death in March of 1991. So, yeah, all that talk about Disney going woke nowadays and stuff, and yet one of their darkest and most sinister songs is an allegory for homophobia. And it's not like it went over the producers' heads or anything. They recognized it too, and were cool with it since it felt more personal and fit both the story and the villain perfectly. I bring this all up because since Nimona is one big allegory for the LGBTQ, and since apparently me wanting the director to be a better villain makes me bad according to some people, I just thought you guys should know Gaston beat the director to the punch over 30 years ago. Which is ironic given Disney's treatment of gay people in the last couple of years. If you were going to go down the more fun route with this character, which given how other characters like Nimona herself is, then so long as you can balance the tone the same way Gaston does, I'd say you'd have a very fun, sinister, and possibly new memeable villain. Or at least that's one way to go about it. Wait a minute. I like Gaston? Huh, I guess since I love watching him, that must mean that I love harassing women and inciting violent mobs whenever I get rejected, right?
No. I do not. That's how that shit went down last time.
You also could have gone down the Frollo route and made for this cruel, nuanced, and captivatingly evil figure. So, let's talk about the horny man now. You don't need me to introduce you to this man. Everybody knows how awesome Frollo is. He's often considered Disney's most evil and complex villain that they've ever written. And yeah, as Disney villains go, he's pretty damn good. He's sort of the polar opposite to Gaston when you really think about it. Sure, they're both influential figures in their respective worlds, but while Gaston is egotistical and bombastic, Frollo, on the other hand, is fearful and devout. While Gaston is pretty loosey-goosey and just does whatever he wants, Frollo has a code and tries to follow it to the letter. Emphasis on tries, but like all humans, he's not perfect. The movie starts off with him killing an innocent woman and then trying to drown a baby. That's very Christian of you, Frollo. That's very Kirk Cameron of you, Frollo. It isn't until the Archdeacon appears that Frollo finally realized the totality of his actions and what that'll mean for his eternal soul. So he adopts Quasimodo and raises him as his own, but throughout the whole film, he clearly sees Quasimodo as more of a burden, if anything. The way I see it, he didn't learn his lesson that day. He still believes deep down that he was justified in killing Quasimodo's mother, and still actively tries to purge Paris of the gypsies. Now, like I said, Frollo isn't perfect. He's still human at the end of the day, so when he meets Esmeralda for the first time, he becomes lustful for her and dreams of making her his. This, however, conflicts with his mission to wipe out the gypsies, so he settles that if he can't have her, No one can. It's very rare for a Disney villain to have this kind of complexity, especially from a movie that's G-rated, mind you. We're definitely never gonna see this kind of thing from Disney ever again. And don't bring up the live-action remake, you know it's gonna be worse. For a character like Frollo, to have such layers to him, to see him battle between his lust for Esmeralda and his commitment to his mission is so damn intriguing. And I think that's why a lot of people just adore Frollo as a villain. So, with that being said, I guess me liking Frollo having death must mean I somehow enjoy lusting over women and wanting to wipe out an entire race of people, right?
No way!
Well, how about we talk about another villain that represents the themes of their story well, and that is Bodie from Waju. And if you've never heard of Waju before, then blame Disney because they didn't market it as per freaking usual. I've already made a video on Waju, so if you want my full thoughts on that, you can go watch that video now. But to sum up my feelings for it here, it's fine, with Bodie easily being the best part of it. It really goes to show Disney does still know how to write an interesting villain if they want to. And yes, despite this being a TV show, it is in fact from Walt Disney Animation Studios, so it counts. Which means that Bodie is now part of the lineup of legendary villains. And while I'm not saying he's as good as any of the legends, he's still easily the best villain we've gotten from Disney since King Candy way back in 2012. And in Waju, there's this prominent theme of class division and capitalism that shows just how disconnected the two are from each other. How the rich elite rarely have to struggle while the poor are left to rot in the streets. In this show, it's revealed that Bodie and his mother used to work for a rich family, but were fired because Bodie stole some money from them to buy a gold chain. Now, yeah, when you're poor as fuck, you don't just go buying jewelry, but with that being said, you still kinda understand why he did it. Throughout his childhood, he was clearly treated like garbage because he was part of the lower class, so now he makes a living by kidnapping rich people's kids and making the parents pay insane ransoms for them. But it doesn't stop there. He actively plants the seeds of resentment into these children, as well as stating to them that to their parents,
To your parents, you're just another problem to throw money at.
which is really interesting to me. It's almost like this is his way of trying to fix the system by having the kids grow to hate their rich parents. But it could also just be pettiness. He's probably just doing it out of hate for the rich elite that ruined his life. Either way, I find that really fascinating. As I said in my full video on the show, it really should have been a movie at the end of the day, or at the very least, used its extra time diving more into that mindset and fleshing it out. Because, as it is, it's interesting, but the show doesn't really do much with it. There's also this blatant hypocrisy where the show shifts the blame entirely onto Bodie in the end. Oh, class division and capitalism aren't the problem is just this one asshole who, alongside millions, suffer from said system. But why would modern Disney call out capitalism and class division? Why on earth would they ever say that's a bad thing? Okay, moving on past that. Bodie was still the best part of the show, and even though he could have been better, he still serves as a great example of how a villain can still have layers and be a villain that represents the broader lesson of the story at the same time. Now since I said I like Bodie, I guess this means I want to fuck over the rich elite and multi-billion-dollar companies, right? Yes, absolutely. What's that? You saw a young single mother with a newborn infant stealing baby formula from Walmart? No, you didn't! Just remember, kids, snitches get stitches, bitches. So here we have three prime examples of villains that are both fun, sinister, and actually represent the broader themes while having nuance at the same time. But what do these three have that the director lacks? Well, names, for starters. Again, I get it. I know why she doesn't have a name of her own. It's supposed to be like the Polar Express. I still hate it though, give her a name. Secondly, she has no personal connection with anyone in the story. Not a single person. Not Ballister, not Ambrosius, nobody. Compare this to the previous three who have pre-established relationships with at least one of the main characters in their respective stories. Frollo has Quasimodo, Bodie has Cole, and even Gaston has at least a connection to Belle. He feels like she wronged him, so he wants payback for that. The villains having a personal connection to one of the main characters makes for far greater stakes, as now we have to worry about how that character will react to seeing that person be revealed to be a villain all along. Even Disney's twist villain phase understood this to a degree. Hans fooled Anna into thinking he loved her. Callahan was Tadashi's teacher / murderer. Even Bellwether, as awful as she was, had a friendship with Judy. I know that one's kind of flimsy, that's more of a testament to how awful of a twist villain she is, but my point still stands that the twist still makes an impact on the character that we, the audience, grew attached to. Sure, these particular examples being twist villains came at the price of their own villainy, but there have been twist villains that managed to find a balance in the past. Stinky Pete, Water Noose, etc. But back to the director, obviously she wouldn't know who Nimona even is, and considering what the movie's doing, that's actually a good thing, and the same could be said for Ballister, but Ambrosius is a different story. See, unlike Ballister, Ambrosius was deemed worthy from the start, and thus the director would accept him with no question. How about you give these two sort of a mentor-like relationship, something kinda similar to Frollo and Quasimodo, only in this case, she would genuinely care about him and see him as a good friend. Remember that scene in the car where she asks him if he's okay, and we get that funny bit of him losing his shit, only to have that hard cut back to silence? It's a good scene already, but imagine if they did have a talk. Imagine if instead of a joke, he actually opens up to her about his mixed feelings about Ballister. And it's in this moment that we would get a surprisingly human moment from the director. Keep in mind, at this point, it's been revealed to both the audience and Bal and Nimona that the director is responsible for the Queen's death. So when this moment comes in, she would explain how she met the Queen in the first place, how she actually respected the Queen and cared for her greatly. In fact, she cared for her quite a lot, actually. They had a lot in common, they spent a lot of time together. You see where I'm going with this, right? It almost seemed like they were a match made in heaven. Until suddenly, Ballister showed up. And everything was all downhill from there. And before y'all start commenting saying she can't be gay herself because she's supposed to represent homophobic conservatives, let me stop you right there with this. That was a deleted scene from back when this movie was being made by Blue Sky. You know, before Disney took over. It's a pretty dark scene that, honestly, I'm not sure would have made the final cut anyway, even if Disney didn't buy Blue Sky. But with that being said, it shows that even the writers were at least experimenting with the idea. And frankly, they were cooking, because when it came to the director...
Wow, that is delicious. Finally. Some good fucking food.
Imagine the director being in love with the Queen, and everything seems perfect. Until suddenly, Ballister shows up, and the Queen starts spouting some woke nonsense, like how anyone can be a knight. Ooh, it doesn't matter where you come from or who you are, anyone can be a knight, why not you? This would devastate the director who, after all this time, thought she knew the Queen by heart. Now at first, maybe she plays along, like maybe this is just a phase. Maybe she'll realize her mistake and move on from it eventually. But she doesn't move on from it, and it's not a mistake. The Queen is absolutely in the right to do this, and the director can see that because of her own prejudices. In the deleted scene, you see the director crying on a staircase, and in that moment, I'm thinking to myself, is she crying over the Queen's death? The death that she orchestrated? Is there actual regret for what she did? Maybe just a smidge, but it had to be done, correct? After all, the people didn't feel safe. It's not what Glarth wanted. Despite her giving the Queen chance after chance to make things right, she never did. So the director did what she thought was necessary. Cutting back to the car, she would tell Ambrosius that for there to be peace, one must choose between heart and duty. And she will then ask him, what will you choose? To which in a few minutes, when Ambrosius sees Ballister again, he makes his choice. Only this time, there's no regret at all. Having this one moment that humanizes the director would have been a game changer. She would have gone from this boring, generic villain into someone that you kind of feel for, but you mostly pity because of just how wrong she is. Remember everybody, understanding a character and how they work is not the same thing as justification. I'm not saying I want there to be justification for homophobia, like some of you thought. But now there would be this unique contrast with her and Ambrosius. She raised him up and believed in him, while the Queen stuck with Ballister. And while Ambrosius would later realize his mistake and choose Ballister over her, the director would just go full Gaston and try to kill the beast. because now the one person left that she fully trusted has left her too. And now it seems she's the only one left to fight the monsters. Uncomfortable, complex, and interesting. That's all I fucking wanted. Oh, but no. Apparently to some people, that's too fucking much to ask for. I just think it's a little weird that nobody complains about the humanity and complexity that Frollo shows, but for some reason, when I asked for the director to be given the same treatment, people outright accused me of homophobia in one case, despite everything that was in that video. Yeah, I wasted a whole month of my life and left a link to the Trevor Project, which is a charity that gives counseling to suicidal LGBTQ kids because I hate gay people so much. Remind me to do that for this video too, since it is Pride Month and I hate you all apparently. Outside of that one whack job, the comments disagreeing with me about the director were pretty respectful actually. Like I said in the beginning, it's okay if you like the director and how she was portrayed. I've just seen better. And for a movie that's pretty damn good in virtually every other category, to see a villain that's just so serviceable is disappointing to me. If the director had that depth and humanity, then this might have been a 10 out of 10 movie for me. But as it is, it's like a high 8, maybe a low 9 at best. But that's just me, and clearly not everyone feels that way, which again, is fine, so long as we can agree that this guy is a serious nutcase who needs therapy. And while you're at it, throw in this guy too. You can tell they just did not watch the movie at all. And also maybe this guy who got all butthurt over me blocking him on Twitter, so he followed me on YouTube to bitch some more about it. Where was I going with this? I had a point. I will say this, however, before I end the video. One thing I have been convinced of being wrong about was the ending. In my defense, to me, this was just a nitpick. I honestly didn't think that hard about it, but hearing some of y'all's thoughts about it, you guys all made a good point. For a movie about LGBTQ, for it to have a happy ending where so many stories don't, that's genuinely a good thing in the end. And now I do believe it is an improvement over the book, which was more ambiguous. But yeah, that's all I gotta say. The director is still a mid-villain in an otherwise fantastic movie that I still really, really like, despite this one hiccup that brings it down a whole point for me. And I felt the need to make another video about it because it was considered one of my hottest takes for the longest time. Could have reviewed Brother Bear finally, but fuck that. So I'll end this video with one last statement. Todd still fucking sucks. He's still the worst character in the movie by far, and I will never apologize for that. And if you feel like I should, go fuck yourself.
In the still of the night, gazing up at the sky, when the stars began to fade, dimming lanterns in our eyes, thought there was nothing to find. I stopped searching for a reason, just let the world embrace us. In the silence, we are one. Can't escape from this feeling.